After a thrilling weekend of Champions League action, we're here to analyse the games. Today we cover Lyon versus Arsenal, where the Gunners pulled off an almighty upset to reach the Champions League final in Lisbon. We discuss how they made life difficult for Lyon through their aggressive pressing structure, and why Lyon's changes in this game led to their own downfall. This is our tactical analysis of Lyon 1, Arsenal 4. Alright, let's get into it. Champions League analysis. Arsenal beating Lyon away from home. A result I don't think many of us expected to see. And Arsenal into the Champions League final. It's their third Women's Champions League final. They've won one, lost one. Now they'll face Barcelona at the end of May. But Harry, your initial thoughts, obviously you were live covering the game. What a crazy one.
Yeah, I think that on stream it was really hard to articulate what I was thinking because I was almost lost for words. No one saw Arsenal turning up against Lyon away from home and turning them over in the fashion they did. And massive credit to Arsenal because they went there and it's like they took all the criticisms, all the negative things that happened in the first leg. They took them and they changed them. They went from being too safe at home to going out and being brave, being bold against Lyon, and it massively paid off. So I think Slager's got it right. I think Arsenal got it right, and it all came together for an absolutely brilliant result, a brilliant night for Arsenal, and now they've got a Champions League final to look forward to. So, well done, Arsenal. That's all you can say sometimes in football because it's the kind of result where you, especially from a Lyon point of view, yes, there were loads of problems, but even Lyon on their day would have found it tough against this Arsenal side, the way they were playing.
What they did last week, Lyon played well last week. Arsenal made it really difficult for them. We spoke about that on last week's show, how actually Arsenal weren't outplayed. They just didn't take their chances. And I think looking back at that in hindsight, that should have been a very good reason to believe Arsenal could get a really positive result. I think we always said there was a result possible for Arsenal. I think the manner in which they went about it, though, was unexpected. I didn't think they'd get 4 goals away at Lyon. I didn't think Lyon would capitulate in that manner. It was a really interesting game. I think a lot of people would automatically assume that due to the differences in the scoreline, that Arsenal did something revolutionary here. They changed something massive. And while there were very small tweaks, broadly it was the same system. And actually, that is the thing in football. Sometimes it is just about getting that luck. Sometimes it is about relying on that variance a little bit. And not saying Arsenal got lucky, but there's always a component of luck to the football game. I thought they were unlucky last week, and they just got the rub of the green this week. And that made the difference. I think the performance across both legs was fairly similar. I think they were more secure in possession this week, is what I'd say. I think Caldense and Little looked more comfortable in that Arsenal midfield, but I don't think that's anything Arsenal silly of Lyon to change their midfield composition, because putting Mochi Dumonet in there may have given them more of an attacking outlook, but it didn't manifest in that way, and it left them short-handed in midfield. And I just thought that was really weird. Got a little picture from the first few minutes to analyse Lyon in possession here. Arsenal's pressing structure. What you can see is heaps dropping into that back three, which is always... It's interesting to see midfielders drop in, but then it leaves you with Dumonet and Egarola in the midfield. And what I really liked about Arsenal was how narrow they were in this moment, how narrow they were with a lot of their pressing in this game. And that made a huge difference as well for Lyon, because even if they play that ball out to the fullbacks who are open in space, it's not necessarily going to be easy for them to get there because Arsenal have 4-on-3 in the back line. So either of their fullbacks could push up, or because their wingers are, one, covering options for the centre-halves to drive forward, but also covering those players as well, because they could drop back into space. So it's really effective zonal covering from Arsenal, then going player to player through the middle, and it made it really difficult for Lyon to play out, and we started to see those mistakes creep in for Lyon.
Yeah, it was one of the criticisms from the first leg was that when that front four went, you ended up with them, and little Kalate got drawn about, it ended up with massive space for Lyon to use, and that's how the first goal came around. But it was much better from Arsenal. They did a much better job. I think McCabe was so much better because she just... It was simple. All she did was drop a couple yards. Every time they lost the ball, she just dropped a couple yards rather than staying high and trying to win the ball and getting caught out. But yeah, it led to Lyon errors, and it was really surprising to see because, again, we talk about the pedigree, we talk about the history and the experience in that Lyon side, but the amount of errors in such a high-profile game was beyond me. It was so bizarre to see.
I think it opens up huge question marks around not the players necessarily. I mean, there are questions there, but I think more the management. I think Montemurro got this horribly wrong. And we speak about how he wants to be in this winner's circle. He wants to go and claim a Champions League trophy because for all his success and all his prestige in women's game, he doesn't really have the titles there to back that up.
Yeah.
And so he was desperate to win it this year. And I think we saw him be a little bit too desperate. He overthought it. It felt similar to Manchester City's men's side in the 2021 Champions League final, where actually if you overthink what the opposition is going to do, you end up just doing their job for them. And I think we saw that in this game. Lyon's changes didn't make any sense. The changes to how they were building up structurally, the changes to how their midfield was composed, the change in the front line. What we saw in the first leg is that Arsenal were incredibly vulnerable in transitional moments. And what Lyon did to adapt to that was put a 35-year-old striker up front. That doesn't make any sense. Ada Hegerberg, admittedly world-class player, but that's not a very transitional forward compared to who you had before in Merchant du Monet. And they lost the midfield balance by not having someone like Marajan or Daniele van der Donk, and instead putting Dumonet in there. I thought they were all really weird decisions, and this is the problem with Montemurro, and the problem therefore for Lyon, because this was a really naive performance. All they had to do was hold out this game.
Yeah.
I think if they played the same way they did at the Emirates, the variance may have gone in their favour, but he overcomplicated it, and they got it wrong. And Lyon obviously made mistakes that fed into Arsenal's play. Arsenal did really well. They made life really difficult for Lyon, but Lyon also made life really difficult for themselves. And that, I think, was a really disappointing way to go out. Let's talk about the goals then. Obviously, the first goal coming in the 5th minute. And this came from that clip that I showed earlier, or the screenshot and the still that I showed earlier, which was Arsenal's pressing. Arsenal press it really aggressively. It ends up then being they turn the ball over, they have an attack, it ends in a corner. This is the corner obviously leads to that first goal. And I don't understand how this happens. Yeah. Christine Endler, I thought she made a catalogue of errors in the first game, but also some big saves. In this game, it was more filled with errors than it was moments of saviour. But yeah, she just panics, flaps at it, and ends up putting it in her own net.
Yeah, it was a complete mess. I have there's just no communication across there for a goalkeeper of Endler's quality to come and miss, to head it into her body and go in the back of the net is inexcusable in this kind of game. And this goal massively set the tone for the match because Arsenal started fast. They'd got an early goal, and Lyon had already made a big blunder that led to a goal for Arsenal. So it really set the tone. We knew, and it was kind of not exactly what we predicted because I didn't think that I'd be watching Lyon defenders head it into their own goalkeeper. But in terms of we knew Arsenal were going to start fast, we knew Arsenal were going to come onto them, and it was a question of whether if Lyon can just see the first 10-15 minutes through, they'll grow into the game. And they did the complete opposite of that, conceding a very early goal through a really stupid error. I wouldn't expect to see that error at most levels, let alone in the highest level in a Champions League semi-final. No communication, Endler's got to deal with it. And then the defender running in, I understand they're trying to take it away from, I think it was Marlon or Ford there, but you've got to head it anywhere that isn't back into your own goalkeeper. You know, just head it up with anything, and then your goalkeeper can come back out and catch it.
Yeah, I thought it was an indication of the wider panic in Lyon's play. I thought we saw a very nervy performance from Lyon, which you wouldn't expect. Lyon, record winners of the competition, finalists in last year's edition. You'd expect them to be the side that comes into a game against an Arsenal team who are filled with players who haven't played at this level of the competition before. And you'd think that Lyon would come in and be the cool team, the collected team, and perhaps Arsenal would be a bit panicky. But it's a really mature performance from Arsenal, a really intelligent performance from Arsenal. I think Slagers deserves huge credit for how she's cultivated that feeling in this squad. And then obviously on the flip side, I don't know what Montemurro said in the dressing room, but the players looked nervous out there. I thought that was a really weird observation. You want to talk about throw-ins in the game for Lyon? What happened there?
It was it's something I've really never seen before in football. Every defensive throw for Lyon would end up falling straight back into the hands of Arsenal, and it's something that you don't really see usually, because it wasn't even that the throw would happen. They'd play a couple of passes and then they'd get dispossessed while playing in a tight area. But the amount of times Arsenal turned the ball over because they jumped in front of a Lyon player as the throw-in was coming in, or they put in a nudge in the back that wasn't a foul, but it was enough to offset a Lyon player and then win the ball straight from the throw-in. And again, I think it shows that mentality, that desire that Arsenal brought into the game, and the lack of it from Lyon, because Arsenal were making sure they were first to every ball. They were jumping in front of Lyon players to get to the ball first, and they're doing well to not commit fouls. I think that's why I praise Arsenal, because I think they found the right line. They weren't over the top and just barging into people and just running around like crazy people, but they also weren't too safe, and they weren't too slow to react. They were really sharp with it, but they were also on the line, and they weren't giving away silly free kicks. So, and Lyon, on the other hand, it was flat-footed, and again, I think it's something that went on and on throughout the game, and it became more frequent because Arsenal were getting on top, they were getting in control, and Lyon were really starting to struggle. But it's a basic of football. You can't afford to keep giving the ball away in your own half straight from a throw-in, because not only do you lose the ball, but you've also got a player who's currently stood off the pitch because they've just taken a throw. So it caused them all sorts of problems, and I just think it was again another really weird error to see from such an experienced side in such a big game.
Yeah, completely agree. There's not many screenshots to analyse with these goals, because a lot of them came from real bad Lyon errors, so there's not much you can look at in terms of structure. But let's talk on that second goal then. And this one, less Lyon error and more, this is why you sign players like Mariona Caldente, because they're difference makers at this level of the competition. And we saw it in this game, because Caldente picks up the ball in a position that no other player on the pitch really. Well, there are a few, but not many players are going to shoot with that kind of accuracy and that kind of power and drill home an effort from there. And that's the difference. They're the kind of players that get you into Champions League finals with moments like these. And the strike from Caldente, incredible. And it took Arsenal into the ascendancy at a really key moment. We saw a game state change just before half-time. And that's really difficult to adapt to, because you go for Lyon from going into the break level to coming out of it needing to go and find a goal. And that does change in that moment the message that needs to be spoken about in that halftime team talk. And I think that probably disrupted massively what Montemurro wanted to do in the second half, because suddenly they had to go and chase the game a bit more. And so I think that would have been really difficult for Lyon to adjust to. Yeah. Really important goal and important moment.
Exactly. I think across the game, it was really important goals in really important moments for Arsenal. We'll touch on the ones in the second half, but to score, when you're chasing a game, to score right at the start of the game, right at the end of the first half, right at the start of the second half, they're massive changes in the biggest moments of the game. Those additional minutes going into half time are really important, because you're just about to get a break. Scoring at the very start of the game when you're 2-1 down in aggregate is absolutely huge. And I think Arsenal, the timing of everything, it wasn't purposeful to only score in those areas, but
even their last goal as well came 5 minutes after Lyon's first substitution.
Yeah.
And that disrupts how Lyon then respond with more subs.
The timing was incredible, and they nailed it. But yeah, Caldente, difference maker. It was an absolutely brilliant goal. It puts her onto 7 for the campaign. I think the thing I find interesting about Caldente, because the other top scorer, you look at Russo, you look at Pina, they've scored, their goals have come because they've scored like more than one in certain games. Caldente has scored 7, but he has scored in 7 different matches, and that is why she is a difference maker. That is why she's you sign her when you want to go on and compete in Champions Leagues, because that consistency is just absolutely incredible. To score in 7 different Champions League games when they've only played 10 now, 12. It's incredible. So it's ridiculous, and she was absolutely brilliant in this game. And I think again though, her shooting from this range was another sign of how Arsenal would come out and they were braver and they were bolder, because in the first leg this ball could have easily been passed sideways, but instead Caldente picks it up, she has a go and finds the top corner, and it's a brilliant goal.
Yeah, exactly. I think the only thing Lyon can do, players have to close that down quicker. There's about 4 players in front of her, and nobody takes that responsibility in going and closing that down. Thought that was really weak from Lyon, but it was just, again, defensive confusion. I thought with Renard coming back in, it would be that Lyon looked more structurally solid defensively, more confident, and there'd be better organisation in that back line, but it was just a muddle today in this game for Lyon. So, yeah, really confusing one. The third goal then, coming obviously just after half-time, Lyon send the ball forwards, it comes right back at them from Arsenal, and there's 3 just really silly errors. Vanessa Gilles, it needs to be headed forwards, or just let it drop and boot out of play.
Yeah.
Instead, she tries to head it, leaning backwards, heads it on, obviously. Lyon defenders scrambling to get back. They end up almost win the ball back, then fall over it again, and it drops out to Russo, and Russo finishes it off really nicely. But how so many players made mistakes in that move for me is just so confusing.
Yeah.
Just smash the ball out of play. That's all that needs to be done in that moment. Instead, they overcomplicate it. They're tripping over themselves. They're tripping over each other, tripping over the ball. And it's a mess, an absolute mess from Lyon. It falls to Alessia Russo, who does really well in that position, as you'd expect from Russo, breaking into the penalty area, slots it past Christine Endler, really well taken finish. But yeah, again, Lyon, it's abysmal, really.
Yeah, it was really poor, and as you say, it was a great assist by Gilles. It was right, but the problem is though, is that Peter will say it's unfortunate because she slides in, the ball falls straight to Russo. But the only reason that that's happened is because it's a last ditch tackle because they've messed around with it. She's had to slide in to win the ball, but because she's more worried about just tackling, she hasn't thought about where it's going to go, and it falls straight to Russo. And Russo 1-on-1, the season she's having, she would beat any goalkeeper in the world right now. So that was always going to go in, and again another brilliant finish. But this was the big one for me. So it was an absolutely criminal from Lyon because half time we all sit there, second half's about to kick off, and everyone's like, right, can Lyon second half kicking off when you are already losing now on aggregate? It's just not good enough. And it massively let them down because Arsenal at 3-0, they had a 2-goal lead on aggregate, and they were in an absolute brilliant position to go on and see this game out. And even the side like Lyon would have done well to even attempt to come back from it.
Yeah, and obviously it got incredibly difficult or almost impossible at 4-0, 63 minutes on the clock. Caitlin Ford managed to score. Vanessa Gilles, I just, it's one of those games where everything that could go wrong has gone wrong for her. And I don't want to pin the blame solely on her for these goals because I do think there are larger problems for Lyon, but her performance was reflective of that. And I think, huge mistake in this level of the Champions League, which frankly isn't. You just can't get away with stuff like that, and Caitlin Ford rightly punishes it. It's a really well taken finish from Ford. I think in that moment it's easy to panic and just have a strike, but actually she places it well, makes it difficult for Christine Endler, and I mean, at that close range, Endler was half a chance anyway. But I think Ford, did really well to finish this off. Gilles, really disappointing mistake, really disappointing performance, and I think reflective of the wider errors in that Lyon team.
Yeah, because this goal fully came because it was rushed from Lyon. Endler, the ball goes out for a goal kick. She sprints to get it, puts it down, doesn't even really look up or consider the situation, just plays it out to Gilles, who wasn't really ready for the ball. She takes a touch, and suddenly Ford's on her. She rushes to try and kick it, slips over, and Caitlin Ford, credit to her because again the Arsenal press is incredible, and she does the right thing in this situation when you're that close to goal. Just put your foot through it and hope for the best. And that's exactly what she did. Just thundered it into the roof of the net and didn't give Endler a chance, and that was brilliant. Again, it was an indication of how well Arsenal played because Arsenal, we do criticise them sometimes for not being clinical. That's the type of chance that maybe they would have taken advantage of, but 4 goals. They were so accurate in front of the net. They caused all kinds of problems for Lyon. They really put them to the sword, which is something we've never seen a side do to this Lyon defence. It was absolutely brilliant.
Well, again, it just feels like the inverse of last week's game, where both sides had chances, but Lyon took theirs, Arsenal didn't. In this game, Arsenal took all their chances and Lyon didn't. I mean, 19 shots to 9 in favour of Lyon, but they had less shots on target.
Wow.
So pot shots aren't going to cut it. They still, though, generated 3 big chances. Arsenal generated 3 big chances. The difference is Arsenal only missed 1, Lyon missed 2, and Arsenal scored chances that weren't qualified as big chances statistically. So, again, Arsenal dominated possession, 55% to 45%. Really mature performance, I thought, from Lyon. So from Arsenal, sorry, really impressive. And it opens up big questions about where they sit now in terms of Europe's hierarchy, because they are now into the Champions League final. They will have 90 minutes against Barcelona in Lisbon to try and claim the Champions League trophy. For Chelsea fans, it really is the battle of the two evils. But I think it's going to be a really interesting contest. I think a lot of people will automatically write Arsenal off, especially if they're of a Barcelona persuasion. But I think Arsenal will go into that game with belief they can compete. And I think they've shown in this Lyon game that why can't they compete with teams? So I think this is a really nice marker for Arsenal. As much as I hate to say it, they did play really well here, and they are looking really impressive. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens in Lisbon. Don't get me wrong, I still think Barcelona are strong favourites. I don't think anyone's denying that. But I think Arsenal are definitely in with a chance.
Yeah, 100%. No one thought that. Yeah, there was a slim chance Arsenal were going to get through to the final, but no one thought. It's for me, it's the manner in which that they played in across both legs. I know they lost the first, but across both legs was that if they were to get through, they didn't scrape through. It wasn't a scrappy match they came out on top of. They outclassed Lyon over the especially that second 90 minutes. They were absolutely brilliant, and a lot of people wrote them off and thought they'd get knocked out, but as you say, they've put themselves right into that conversation now that they're showing that they can compete. They're Champions League finalists. That's as much evidence as you really need. So credit to them. As you say, 90 minutes in a Champions League final against the best side in the world right now. It sounds difficult, but football is football, and all you need is a couple of factors to fall your way, and suddenly Arsenal are Champions League winners.
Yeah, I think it's incredible they've got here. I think when you look at their other performances this season, rightfully people would have said, well, they can't really get past Lyon. They weren't convincing against Real Madrid. The second leg was impressive, but they were at home and Real Madrid folded like a cheap deck chair. And obviously they're not going to win the league realistically. They were knocked out in the semi-finals of both cup competitions, or the quarterfinals of the FA Cup, and other quarterfinals again, weren't it, in the League Cup. So yeah, disappointing in those regards. But in the Champions League, they're into the final, and they've got the potential now to have arguably the best season in the WSL if they go on and win it, which from a position where it's such an important game because it's either a trophyless season or Arsenal have won the Champions League, which is the trophy that Chelsea have been coveting now for the last 5 years and haven't got as close as Arsenal have.
Yeah.
In the sense that, they are as close as Arsenal, but provided Arsenal don't lose 5-1, they've arguably had a better attempt at winning it than Chelsea have in the last 5 years. So they put themselves in a really good position here, Arsenal, to stake a claim as the WSL's best side. They've got a chance to win the Champions League for the second time, and obviously they are the only WSL club to have won it in history. So, yeah, big chance for Arsenal. Going to be interesting.
Yeah, it's something they've already got over Chelsea fans, and if they went on 1-2, that would just be a massive kick to the balls for Chelsea. But
I'll turn the stream off.
Yeah. But I think, in a season where you sack your manager at the start, to end up in a Champions League final at the end is an achievement in its own right. So credit to Arsenal Slagers, and as you say, as long as they don't get embarrassed, then I think it'll be a massive day for them.
Yeah, definitely should be. I think that just about rounds up this video. We'll be back tomorrow to basically just cry about Barcelona-Chelsea. At least that's what the Barcelona fans will comment. So join us tomorrow for that analysis. I hope you have enjoyed today. If you're watching on the Wednesday, we will be live tonight for Arsenal versus Aston Villa and Chelsea versus Manchester United. So should be some fun streams coming up this evening. That was everything from us today. Thank you guys very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.